Hello and welcome to the Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Bottaro, and today I have an exciting, really awesome, super special episode to share with you. I've got two of my most favorite people in the world with me today. I have one is my old professor, one of my original formators and formation mentors, Dr. Peter Kreeft. He is zooming in on the Zoom call from Boston College. And we're talking about philosophy and integration and AI and a lot of things that are leading into the summit of integration, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But the second person is my son, Elijah. My oldest came into the meeting. Wasn't sure if he was going to make it in, but he did. And it was such a delight to have him join us and to have somebody who is so instrumental in my personal formation with somebody whom I'm pouring myself out now into his formation, to share these two together and to see them even having conversation with each other. It was really precious. So I recently gave Elijah some of the books from Kreeft that were really important and thinking how to see philosophy, why does it matter, and some of those questions Elijah got to ask Dr. Kreeft about directly. So that was really beautiful. Peter Kreeft will be one of our presenters at the Summit of Integration. I am cordially inviting you to join us. It's going to be June 20th to 22nd in Madison, New Jersey. And so we're going to be at Drew University, where we're going to be using their hall for presentations. And it's going to be a beautiful event. We also have tickets available for virtual. If you can't make it in person to New Jersey, you can get both tickets at CatholicPsych.com/summit. June 20th to 22nd, virtual tickets, in-person tickets. I hope you'll join us in person. We're going to have a special concert, acoustic concert from Matt Maher, which is pretty rare. He usually plays with his whole band and everybody. This is going to be a small, intimate kind of venue. Really beautiful time together, celebrating the integration of faith, science, and reason, the psychology of the human person mixed with philosophy and spirituality. We're also going to have Father Columba, CFR, who's amazing. We have a great theologian, Jennifer Morell, who's going to be talking about embodiment and being, male and female and this crazy life that God has laid out for us. And we have Heather and Jake Kim, who each have their own platforms and podcasts, and they do wonderful work, all in line with this deep understanding of integration, what it means to be human. So I hope you'll join us for the Summit of Integration. We did it once last year, and it was just a one-day event. We loved it so much. It was such a success. People had such an amazing time that we're like, well, let's make it bigger. So we stretched it out over 3 days, June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. And we've got a huge venue for it now, live music. It's going to be awesome. I hope you'll join us there. And for now, I hope you'll enjoy this podcast. Again, this is such an awesome, special experience for me, and I'm so happy to share it with you. I hope it blesses you.
I spent the last 10 years learning how to help people using the best techniques available in psychology integrated with the Catholic faith. Now we've figured out that there's a better way to help people than just slapping a Catholic label on the same secular model of therapy you find anywhere else. The real question is, how will we make this shift to a new model of truly Catholic accompaniment, keeping the psychological sciences in mind while opening up to a more human and more effective approach? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I take you behind the scenes of what this new model looks like, using recorded audio from sessions working with my team, with colleagues, and even directly with clients. My name is Dr. Greg Bottaro, and I want to welcome you to the Being Human podcast.
So here we are, wonderfully discussing technology, and I gave a talk. I was up in Boston area, and I mentioned, as I often do, my origin story, and I talked about being at Boston College in your class as a freshman, and somebody came up to me afterwards, and they said, "Oh," and I don't know his name, but he said, "Oh yeah, I was also in Dr. Kreeft's night class in the year 2000." and he was learning Socrates. I think it was a class on Socrates and Christ. And he said, "Does Dr. Kreeft does he still have an aversion to technology?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I think he's pretty good in responding on email, but I don't know." He said, "Well, back in 2000, you were making comments about, I guess, Word, the word processor, Microsoft Word, and how there were too many other buttons that had to you wanted to throw the whole thing in the garbage or throw the whole thing out the window."
Well, I still have dreams of torture and dismemberment to Bill Gates for inventing his torture chamber, but I've got it fairly under control. But no, since it first came out, technology is my only enemy. I'm a wimp. I don't hate anything or anybody, but I hate everything digital. I hate, despise, loathe, fear, and are terrified by it.
Well, I was really thinking about this because I remember your comments even back then, and Dr. Paul Vitz also is a good friend, and he talks about the analog and the digital in terms of human experience. And I was really surprised when we had first talked about, well, we did a podcast before, and I came up to visit you at BC, and I came to the office for office hours, and I kind of set up some equipment there to record in person. But I was surprised at your openness and suggestion that maybe the next time we just do a Zoom call. And I was like, wow, you've come a long way from wanting to throw the word processor out the window, but now
a Zoom call is all your fault, not mine. You set it up. All I do is press a button.
I see. So if you're not responsible for managing the technology, then it's okay.
My deepest fear in life is that at some time in the future, my astonishing incompetence at everything digital will not be believed by somebody whose life depends upon my being able to order something or get through to something. If this is a life or death thing, I'm going to be a murderer. That's my fear.
So you're anticipating that we're gonna be in a situation where life and death decisions are being made on technological expertise?
This is my nightmare. Yes, I have a very weird brain. I've taken 7 different languages. Oh, I've got to shut this thing off if I can. We are immortal. You can't shut them off. Okay. I've taken 7 different language courses, and I got straight A's in every one of them, Latin, Greek, and German. But the French course was conversational, and there were no textbooks. So I was totally flunking. And now there are no textbooks for anything in digital stuff, because it's, to make a book about everything in a smartphone would take more space than the whole Library of Congress. So nobody makes guidebooks anymore. And I live by guidebooks. So
interesting. So in your learning in school, did you spend a lot of time actually studying, memorizing things that are in the book, or how is you have?
Oh, I lived in books. I love books. I'm a bookworm.
Do you have a photographic memory?
Only the things that interest me. I have a photographic memory for poems and music, not for numbers. The only way I memorize telephone numbers is I change them into letters. I had a friend in California whose telephone number was Kiss Big, and one in Virginia whose telephone number was Violins.
Very interesting. So you translate them. Is it like on a number pad where the numbers are, you have 3 letters?
Yeah.
Okay. I spend a lot of time trying to think about, for business or thinking about a new phone number. What are all the different word combinations that you could come up with?
My cell phone number is El Yucco.
You probably shouldn't spell that out right now. You might get some people calling.
Different ways of spelling it.
That's a nonsensical word that probably can't be figured out. So that's safe, I'd say.
No, something stupid in Spanish.
There you go. Well, this is our big topic here of integration and human experience, and sort of how do we safeguard how to really live a healthy, flourishing human life. And I think this is the biggest topic right now with AI and technology sort of exponentially developing. How do you think about your role as a professor or a philosopher in terms of safeguarding in some way or putting into the conversation some point or premise to keep humanity from going completely off the rails?
I'm trying to think of some great philosophical issue that AI would make a difference to, and I can't think of a single one, except maybe the morality of lying. I mean,
Oh,
if you have a robot to create a brilliant term paper, uh, university regulations prohibit professors from penalizing students for using AI because it's undetectable. We can still penalize them for copying from living human beings, but we can't penalize them by copying from robots.
interesting.
That's the only moral issue I think that that comes to mind. Everything else in the entire history of human thought is, to my mind, totally indifferent to AI. Partly because there is no such thing as AI. AI means artificial intelligence. The machine is not intelligent. The biggest supercomputer is nothing more than a more complex version of an electric eye door. Nobody thinks that there's a little person behind that light that whenever a body interferes with the light, it knows to open the door. It doesn't know anything.
So how about going beyond morality though, just in terms of being healthy, being sort of flourishing, sort of what's a smart way to move forward navigating this question of how much do we use these instruments and tools?
I'm sorry, you'll have to ask either a technologist or a doctor. I'm not an expert in that.
You don't have any philosophical perspective on that?
I don't. No. Obviously, technology is a vast extension of our power, and obviously, power can be used for either good or evil. And obviously, power doesn't itself supply the standards of what things are good and what things are evil.
How about things like
All forms of power, technology is a thing. It can be well used, it can be misused.
what about like the philosophy of art, for instance, or philosophy of beauty? People using AI here to create artistic renditions of things.
There's a 19th century Catholic philosopher, Henri Bergson, who tells a parable of a race of digital bees that were like a living computer. And they said they can understand everything infallibly and totally and certainly and clearly and distinctly with no remainder, no matter how mysterious it is. So a great artist got a painting, maybe it was the Mona Lisa, let's say, said, okay, explain the Mona Lisa. So these thousands of bees buzzed around the Mona Lisa and reduced the whole thing to a 30,000 page book of mathematical symbols. Each molecule and each permutation and combination of possible mathematical relationships between them and all the albedos of light and all that could be possibly digitalized and quantified were there in that formula. 30,000 pages long. They presented it to the artist, and the artist laughed. And the bees said, "Why are you laughing?" And the artist said, "Because you didn't succeed in giving me the Mona Lisa. That is not the Mona Lisa." "Well, what's missing? Let's check our calculations. Did we err anywhere?" I said, "No, that's not the Mona Lisa, even though everything is there."
What's
Quantity
missing?
versus quality. According to Aristotle, quantity and quality are two different categories which are irreducible. You can express qualities in quantities like IQ or albedo of light, but the blueness of blue and the redness of red is not the same as 580 angstrom units versus 340 angstrom units. They're not the same at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes sense, sort of theoretically. What I'm wondering about is, and what I see happening is that it seems like our humanity, our society, is moving away from a receptivity to the things that are truly human,
Of course.
and we have. It's almost like it needs to be more deeply a part of the foundation of how people are formed in culture and society and in family life, that they would even know the difference.
I totally agree with you. Back in the 1980s or 1990s, I got a phone call from a famous person. I recognize his name because his books have been reviewed in a lot of places. It was some Eastern European name. Most people would recognize it, but I'd forgotten it. And he was one of the leaders of the computer revolution. And he must have read something in one of my books about my suspicion of computers, which is why he researched me and called me. And he was going on and on about the fact that the human brain is not a stable thing. It's a malleable thing, and it's a functional thing. And the more parts of it are exercised, the better it is. And the less other parts are exercised, the weaker it becomes. And he says that the whole digital revolution, which was already happening, has radically changed human thinking itself. Just as if you have a lot of slaves, you have to be the slave master and you have to conform to the slave, the old master-slave paradox. And I thought he was a bit extreme. And he sensed some skepticism, and he said, I will give you 2 empirical experiments to test my hypothesis. I noticed that you began your career in the 1960s by teaching logic, and it was always all ordinary language logic, Aristotelian logic, Socratic logic, not mathematical logic. And now students study mainly mathematical logic. Get out your old logic quizzes and test them on the categories, Aristotle's 10 categories, especially on analogy. I'll bet they'll all flunk. So I did that. I got my old tests out, which the students had no difficulty with in the 60s and 70s, and this was the 90s. And I gave that test to them, and they almost all flunked. They did not understand analogies. I remember one conversation I had with a very intelligent student. The question was, is the term hands used univocally, that is one meaning only, equivocally, that is 2 totally different meanings, or analogically, that is 2 related meanings, in the sentence, with my hands, I pointed to the hands of the clock? And the answer, of course, was analogically. And all the students in the class guessed. So it was about a third, and he was one of the ones that guessed right. And he said, but I don't understand it. And I tried to explain it to him, and he didn't understand it. Very intelligent student, he didn't understand analogies. Well, this expert who phoned me said, I'll give you a second test. The SAT people who invent these questionnaires that you have to take in order to get into decent universities or graduate schools have 4 different sections on the reading, the required reading exam. And one of them is about analogies. I predict that within 5 years, they will not be able to ask any questions about analogies anymore because everyone will flunk them, even Harvard students who get 100 on everything else. I said, that's rather radical. And I hung up and thought he was rather an extremist. Well, 1 or 2 years from then, I found that this actually had happened. I read an article in the paper that said the SAT people no longer can quiz even Harvard students on analogies because they all flunked them. Because the one thing digital computers cannot understand is analogies. So we are becoming digital computers. We are becoming artificial intelligence.
Well, that's another angle I hadn't even thought about, how we're becoming less human, more like computers, while the computers are becoming more, at least mimicking more closely what humans can do.
Yeah, a boy who lives with wolves becomes more wolf-like, and the wolf becomes more boy-like.
Wow.
A blend.
So what's left? Where's where's?
Oh, the brain's still there. It's still there. We haven't undergone brain surgery. The muscles are there. We just have to exercise them. We just have to describe the arts and music and poetry and the rest of it. And not. I read. I couldn't believe this. It was a respectable source. 99.4% of all research and development money in all universities in America combined go to the STEM courses. 0.6% goes to all the arts and all the humanities together.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And some universities are dropping their whole humanities program. I've been told that in Australia, outside of seminaries, there are no humanities programs. Everything is STEM. You cannot get a secular education in humanities.
We homeschool our kids, and I keep thinking, I'm hoping that the effort that we make now in preserving the humanities and these other parts of education in the future, for our kids, they're going to stick out like sore thumbs in terms of a shining light in a culture. But I actually don't even know if that's true. If society, if the whole fabric of society is transforming along with this shift in education, what can the future actually look like?
Well, the human heart was designed in heaven, not in Harvard. So I think that we've still got the equipment and we've got enough common sense to say, wait a minute here. When something gets really, really bad, even dumb people wake up. I mean, there were a lot of intelligent Germans who loved Nazism, but not in 1945. It was pretty clear by then that it was a disaster.
Yeah, we have to go through these waves, I guess. Did you ever see the movie Demolition Man, Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes movie?
No.
It's got to be from I don't know if it's the 90s, but it was a futuristic, sort of post-apocalyptic setting, and all of society is like perfect and peaceful, and everything is AI, but there's no human connection at all. So they're not allowed to touch at all. There's no shaking of hands. There's no kind of embraces.
Yep.
And there's this underground, and so there are a few rebels that are still, and they're living literally under the streets.
Yep.
And they're dirty, and they're the rebels who are maintaining the core of humanity. And I'm starting to think that's probably that's where our kids are going to end up.
This is essentially the plot of Brave New World, which I think is the most prophetic book of modern times. If you want to know where humanity is going, read it. In Brave New World, the word mother is an obscenity. People are made in test tubes.
Yeah, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
I was just reflecting on scripture in the Psalms where they talk about the barren womb, and the
blessed are the barren. Yeah.
Blessed are the barren. I mean, what a crazy reality to actually start to step into.
Well, commonsensically, the single most important product that any culture can ever produce in order to ensure its future is children. And the whole of Western civilization is at a birth dearth. South Korea, for instance, has the lowest replacement rate of any culture in the entire history of the world.
Yeah, I mean,
were it not for immigration, we'd all be going into the sea.
Yeah, Elon Musk almost doesn't sound so crazy. I mean, he's not exactly going about it in the way that we would support, but when he thought,
in a sense, it's the opposite, because we need more immigrants, not fewer.
Yeah. Well, but he's also trying to have as many children as possible.
He is, yes. Superior children, designer children.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Hold on one second.
Products.
Yes. Oh, hey. Actually, speaking of which, here's one of my products right here.
Oh, wonderful.
This is my son Elijah. This is Dr. Peter Kreeft.
How do you do, Elijah? Let me see here.
I told him.
Not a robot, are you?
No, I'm just nervous a little bit.
Congratulations. Welcome to the human race.
Here.
I'm just a little bit nervous.
So am I. So am I, actually.
So Dr. Kreeft was my professor in college. Usually when my kids knock on the door and interrupt in the middle of podcasting, I send them away with a scowl, but I figured we might have a great opportunity for one of my students to meet one of my teachers.
I am open to that opportunity. I welcome him.
What have you been reading recently?
I've been reading your book on philosophy.
Wow, good for you.
Thanks. I was wondering, how did you get into philosophy? How did you yeah?
Good question. Well, I love to read literature, poems, short stories, novels, and I was always looking for the philosophy of the characters. Now, is he a believer, an unbeliever? Is he an optimist, a pessimist? What does he believe about life after death? How does he get his morality? And I kept asking those questions, and my teacher said, you should study philosophy. So when I got into college, I enrolled in a philosophy course, and the professor was probably certifiably insane. I mean, he would put his chair up on top of his desk and says, "I'm a king here, and this is not a democracy, and you are my slaves." and he would play silly games with us. And I didn't like him at all. I learned almost nothing. So I told the registrar, I don't want to take any more philosophy courses. And the registrar said, try taking Dr. Jellema. I said, okay. So I took Dr. Jellema, and Dr. Jellema was the best philosopher I've ever had. It was like Socrates. He made me ask really great questions. So I fell in love with philosophy because I went from probably the worst philosophy teacher I ever had to the best one I ever had.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
Ask her if he knows anything about Lord of the Rings characters.
But yeah, do you know anything about the Lord of the Rings? Like,
I hope so. I wrote a book about it. It's my favorite book of the whole 20th century.
oh, that's cool. I want to look at that.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite character?
My favorite character, I forget his name. He's the guy in, who helps Frodo when he's in the forest and they're all being trapped by the giant.
Oh, Tom Bombadil.
Oh, yeah, Tom Bombadil.
Yeah. Peter Jackson couldn't put him in the movie. The movie was too long as it was. He's delightful. You know, Tolkien said he didn't understand who Tom Bombadil was. He just dreamed about him, and he came into his dream, so he put him into the story.
It's pretty interesting. In your philosophy book, you have a chapter. What is time travel real? I wanted to know, what are your do you believe time travel is real?
I don't think it's possible to go back in time, because if it was, you could go back and kill your grandfather, and then you wouldn't exist. So if you don't exist, how can you kill your grandfather?
Right.
Now, maybe we can go ahead in time if the mind can leave the body and see things that haven't happened yet, like the prophets in the Bible. I think that's possible.
Right. I was confused because you were talking in the book. You said about near-death experiences. Like in an instant, they like saw like conversations and stuff.
Yep.
And but that actually took longer. I was wondering, is that forward travel or is that past travel? Like going forward, was it length?
I don't know of any examples of either forward travel or past travel. It's usually the present. Like when somebody is brain dead and heart dead for a few minutes, they still see things that are happening. There's a famous case where a lost shoe was found on the roof of a hospital building, and another one where a diamond ring was found in the wastebasket of a men's room. Because the person that's out of their body saw it. They checked and it was true.
Right. Yeah, I heard it. That one. That's
Oh, that happens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that happen that we don't know about. In Hamlet, probably the greatest play ever written, Hamlet sees his father's ghost, and Hamlet's best friend Horatio doesn't believe in ghosts, and Horatio sees the ghost too. He doesn't know what to believe, and Hamlet says, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamed of in your philosophies." I think that's a very good philosophy. There's always more out there than we know.
Right. That's cool.
But one of the things I was thinking about with in sort of metaphysical conversations, and I had the blessing of sitting in the class with Father Norris Clark.
Oh, great man!
And he taught at Fordham. And were you at Fordham when he was teaching at Fordham?
I certainly was.
So did you had him as a professor?
He was the mentor of my master's thesis. He was very, very patient with me. Well, he was brilliant. He made the most difficult concepts as clear as could be.
It was really beautiful experience to be in the class with him, and he also triggered some of the most pressing, ongoing questions, sort of like bringing to the surface some of the controversies or the debates that were happening in the world of physics. When I had them, they were just building, or they had just started running the particle reactor at CERN, and so he was kind of deep involved with all the things they were discovering there. But he posed this question about what the true separation of body and spirit how it might be explained. Obviously, it's not possible, but how it might be explained at the point of death. If there's like an energy field, or if there's somehow some connection to some level of matter that accompanies the spirit. Do you remember him ever talking about that?
Yeah. We don't know whether when the soul leaves the body, it has some sort of material semi-body, like a ghost, or not. We just don't know. We know what we are now, and we know that in heaven we have new bodies, resurrection body. But what's in the middle, we can only speculate. We don't know. Great question. But I'm glad you brought up Father Clark, because he and I are philosophers, and you're a psychologist, and Father Clark's main idea, I think, is that person and being. That is the study of human beings by especially psychology, and the study of all being by philosophers belongs together.
Yes.
He's a personalist, and he's also a great philosopher who does metaphysics and studies being itself. Those have tended to split. Psychologists tend to be very subjective, and philosophers tend to be very objective and impersonal. And his call to bring them together, I think, is the wave of the future. It's got to be done.
It's got to be done. This is something I'm actually working on. I'm working on a book right now. This is a little premature to start talking too much about it, but it's essentially tracking. When I started off at Boston College with you introduced me to philosophy and how to think. And I tell this in my story, but it's essentially, it was really healing. You also introduced me to John Paul II. And it was really important for where I was at to understand the sort of proper vision of marriage. And for me, that made a lot of sense for things I had come out of from my family, and then going forward, what I wanted to build. And then I was starting to study psychology, and then I transferred to Steubenville. And you had written a letter. I don't remember if we talked about this before. I think we might have talked about this before, but you wrote me a letter because Father Clark was teaching a graduate level class as a visiting professor at Steubenville, and I was an incoming sophomore transfer. So you gave me this letter, and John Crosby, who is the director of the program, he came and caught me sitting in Clark's class, and of course, it was waitlisted, standing room only in this classroom. Mm-hmm. And here I am, this undergrad sophomore, and then I go to his office waving this letter from Dr. Peter Kreeft to tell him it's okay if I'm in this class. And John Crosby was like, with all due respect, Dr. Kreeft is not running the program. To say. So I didn't get to stay to the end of the class, but it was a great blessed experience for most of the year. And he was working on the one in the many, and he was sharing a lot of his notes and chapters there, and making the connection between that metaphysical foundation of John Paul II's personalism. And this started to all come together for me now. And I realized I'm going to spend the rest of my life teaching this, understanding this, unpacking this.
Yeah.
And the one in the many is the perfect foundation for theology of the body, for understanding our psychology, understanding what will make us happy in this world and what we're made for in the next, the communion of saints. And that's become my life mission. And it's because of the seeds that you planted, that he watered for a short time, that grew into eventually a doctorate in psychology. But this has to be the movement of the future.
Yeah. That book is the best book about Thomas Aquinas' philosophy ever written in centuries. It circulated in an underground, unpublished form. All the students that took that course kept his notes and used them. And when he discovered that there were dozens of unpublished versions of it, he said, well, I guess I better publish my version of it.
I definitely still have a lot of notes from the time I got to stay in the class. And I'm glad that he finally published the full version. I had the full set of notes.
Yeah.
But that is, it's Thomas Aquinas plus the insights of the experience from phenomenology, from John Paul II's personalism, which is a real beautiful integration, which I'm not, this is not my expertise, but that would be considered existential Thomism, right?
Yes, and John Paul II has a wonderful focus. He knows what's the most important thing, and our culture is no longer a culture of life, but a culture of death, because sex, marriage, and the family are all in crisis. And no society has ever survived when those three foundations are in crisis. So we either turn that around or we go down the drain.
Yes. And especially with the psychology, with the psychologists being the new oracles and proposing all of these ideas about the happy life and how to live a happy life. It's so mission critical that, especially as Catholic therapists and Catholic psychology, we propose this vision of the whole person that John Paul II gave us.
Yep. I remember reading an article in a respected journal that said the profession that contains the most atheists in all of America is psychiatry. However, the majority of psychiatrists, even atheists, recommend religion to their clients because they see that it makes them happy and human. What a paradox.
It's really a fascinating paradox.
They don't believe it, but it works.
You can't deny the evidence. It's, it's almost a true religion of science where, okay, they're going to actually believe and worship at its altar and submit themselves to its truths, even if it disagrees with them.
Yeah, they're at least honest.
Well, what other questions do you have for Dr. Kreeft about characters, or do you have any other books or the philosophy of other characters you can think of? You've read some Shakespeare, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite play?
I like Richard III, but mostly because the main character is super evil, and it's kind of interesting to see his thoughts from usually it's the good guys are the main characters.
Well, the real Richard III wasn't nearly as bad as Shakespeare made him out to be.
Right.
Shakespeare is a genius with his villains, like Macbeth. That's a really dark play.
Right.
He's got some good heroes, too, but he's got some terrific villains.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you ask him what his favorite characters are?
Yeah. What are some of your favorite characters
in Shakespeare?
Well, yeah, in Shakespeare, in Tolkien. Yeah.
Well, since you picked a minor character, Tom Bombadil, I'll pick a minor character in Shakespeare. Jacques in As You Like It. He's a cynic. He's a funny cynic. Yeah. And I've got something like that in me too. I like to, I'm a pessimist. I'm not in my beliefs, but in my emotions. I love the Chronicles of Narnia, and one of my favorite characters there is Puddleglum, especially in the Silver Chair. He's honorable, and he's good, and he's honest, and he's heroic, but he's always looking on the dark side of things. He's always expecting bad things to happen. And maybe part of that is in me because I'm so inaccessible at computers. Whenever I touch them, they do something wrong. But that's pretty harmless.
Yeah. When we're actually putting in our homeschooling co-op, we are actually putting on the play As You Like It, so it's interesting. Really? Yeah. Great.
What character are you?
I am Orlando, the main character's brother. Well, one of Jacques is the person who's like, all the world's a stage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It
reminds me of Socrates. He sees through fakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Elijah first asked me, he wanted to know some good books to start defending the faith. He said he wants to be able to answer people's questions about why we believe in being Catholic. And I said, well, we have to go to the basics. Let's start with some basics in philosophies, which is where we started reading some of your books.
Pascal's Pensées. Pascal is a very practical guy. He's not an abstract philosopher, very concrete. You'll be able to understand him well. It's not a finished book. It's notes for a book, so it's scattered all over the place. So don't look for a perfectly logical outline. But brilliant stuff.
Okay. Thanks. I don't really know any more questions I have.
Oh, that's okay.
I always have questions on the spur of the moment, and then when I'm actually trying to organize them, it just...
Piece of advice, don't ever stop asking questions.
Yeah. I've heard that. There is something else, but I'm now forgetting it.
What about being a college professor? You have questions sometimes about college.
Is college fun?
Yes. And it's not only more fun, but it's usually easier than you think.
I always imagine college to be these huge rows of seats, like, coming up, and then there's this one desk in the middle with this teacher. Everyone's scribbling notes in a notebook and, like, paying attention really, really hard. I don't know. I forget where the basis of that thought came from, but it was like, I don't know. Like, where, like, how do you, like, teach philosophy? Because if philosophy is, like, you defend, how do I say this and put this into words?
Well, you have to cover many different philosophers who have very different ideas and they contradict each other. And yet you've got to defend what you believe is the truth. So the way I teach philosophy is I'm always looking for three voices. My voice, because I'm the teacher and know the most, and the student's voice, because I need to know what their questions are and where they're at, and the philosopher's voice, who's smarter than both of us. So I think of philosophy as a kind of three-legged chair. And if all three legs are there, if you hear the philosopher, if you hear the students, if you hear yourself, and if they're in a kind of a dialogue, that makes it an exciting classroom.
Right.
But too many philosophers just lecture. I know everything, you know nothing. Sit back and take your notes and take a test. That's not good.
That's like putting your chair on the desk.
Yeah, right.
Your description of philosophy is a lot like psychology. It's essentially what ends up happening, where it's really a kind of philosophy, and we just learn these theorists and the history of psychologists who happen to have the largest platform or the loudest voice, or they sold the most books.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's just lost. People are lost in the mix, and there's not any real clear coherence about what is the sort of one truth about the person that we believe in the middle of this survey or this review of other theories.
I've known quite a few psychologists and psychiatrists, and since I have ADD, I had a psychiatrist, Dr. John Rady, who's probably the leading theorist in the field, and I had no idea I had ADD, but I knew my daughter did, and he wanted to interview everybody in the family, so he interviewed me, and he said, after a half hour, you have ADD. I said, how do you know? And the next couple of sessions were fascinating because he didn't just ask me questions, how do you feel, etc., common sense, pop psychology. And he didn't lecture, but he questioned me as Socrates would, or like a lawyer would in court. And it was very, very clear that I had ADD. And that's a plus as well as a minus. I have never met a single human being who doesn't have one very great talent, at least, that puts them above the crowd, and one very great defect or stupidity or inability. We're all handicapped and we're all geniuses, but in different areas. That's all I got to say to every kind of people.
What would you say is your one quality or your one talent?
I intuitively understand philosophy pretty well.
Hmm.
I'm not good at calculation. I'm pretty good at intuition. I'm also good at intuition in chess. I always win in the opening, which is largely strategic and intuitive, and usually lose in the middle game, which is so calculating and complicated that I lose my way.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting to have that intuitive grasp of philosophy and to position to be in a position where you can form so many people. It's also something with both Socrates. You mentioned Socrates, and then a lot of the most effective teachers, I think, approach things from a position of humility.
Yep.
And sort of asking really good questions, like the psychologist that you mentioned. But there also has to be a sort of telos to the dialogue. And so that, it's like it's this mix between the humility of saying, well, all I know is that I know nothing. But I've also found that to be a little disingenuous when, well, you wouldn't be having the conversation if that was true.
Yeah. Yeah. Socrates didn't actually say, I know nothing. He said, I know that I have no absolutely certain knowledge, but I'm looking for it. So you got to tell us, he's got an end, he's got a road, but the journey is going to be long and winding and surprising. And yet it goes in a definite direction.
Yeah, holding both of those is really the challenge. I remember your class that you taught on sex logic and religion, and it was the debate course on rhetoric and dialogic. Debate with you have the students pick sides on these major issues, and you were there just to quote unquote guide the logic, but you clearly had an an understanding of the conclusions that would be the right conclusions to come to. But you also were completely open to the windy turns and twists and sort of the path that got to the end, and it was as varied as the students were in the class.
Yeah. And even the Bible commands us to do that. Be ready to give a reason for the hope that is in you. That's due philosophy. Yeah, take a stand and stand up for the right, but give reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's why I'm kind of coming back around to the beginning of our conversation here, trying to think about what the premise is or the principles for guiding, conversations about AI. As people ask about this, for my sake, from a psychological perspective, how to maintain and protect and safeguard our humanity in the midst of this experience that we're having as a culture. And there really is this underlying sense that the humanity can't be imitated. It can't be reproduced, even though it can be imitated. But there still seems to be a lot of people going off the edge, thinking that their AI, girlfriend or boyfriend is a good replacement, or their AI therapist is going to be as good of a replacement, or we can replace human relationships with artificial intelligence. And the conclusion is clear that it's not possible, but I guess we still have yet to see how to really build the guardrails to help people experience the difference.
Well, we have to understand why they're misusing AI and why they're having so many difficulties. The suicide rate is up alarmingly. Obviously, they're obsessed with their image. Obviously, they're looking for a mirror to see themselves in, and that mirror is other people. And that's not a reliable mirror. The only reliable mirror is God. He's the only one who's all light and no darkness. So if you don't really believe in God, you have to believe in something else. So you're going to erect a false god, an idol, and that's going to fall. It's not going to work.
Yeah, so it's not even really about the instrument or the tool that's being used in the first place.
Yeah. If Hamlet wants to know who he is, he's got to ask Shakespeare, not anybody else in the play, because everybody in the play is confused. But the character is defined by the author, not vice versa.
Yeah, very interesting. I like that a lot. Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate your time. This is really great to catch up with you again.
I appreciate it too. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to having you at the summit and having you present as part of our larger our event celebrating integration and the work of bringing together faith, reason, and logic and science. It's going to be a wonderful experience for people and really blessed to have you a part of that as well.
Thanks. I'm always available, at least online.
All right. God bless.
Thanks for answering
God
my
bless you. Thanks for your questions. They were great.
Thanks for listening to the Being Human podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to help us spread the word and hear more, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review, and subscribe, as it really helps us to get our content out to more people. Be sure to listen next time as I take you deeper into what it means to be human. If you want more free content and information about what we do at the Catholic Psych Institute, head on over to CatholicPsych.com. God bless you.